Hey guys, today we're going to talk about how geographers look at the world. We're going to look at the 5 themes of geography, which is pretty much where geographers start. And then we'll get into some other things, looking at some maps and things like that. But this is kind of a good place to start for this class and kind of a good jumping off point. So here we go. Okay, geography. Geography is the study of the earth and the people, plants, and animals that live on it. Okay, so this is what this class is going to be about. We're going to look at the world from a perspective of each place that we talk about. Okay, so you can see like in this graphic here, the penguin's looking at the globe, but it looks upside down. Well, penguins live on the South Pole, so to him, it's right side up. So we're going to try to look at the way the way people see the world basically from their perspective, okay? And so we're going to get into that, and then we'll also obviously get into like the topography, look at the landforms and those kinds of things of different places as well. Okay, so let's start with the 5 themes of geography. So the 5 themes are, we'll just start over here. So we got movement, so this is why and how people travel from place to place, what kind of ideas do they bring with them, what kind of goods or services do they have with them as well. So how do things move in the world? The next one is region. Okay, so what physical features are similar in the area, what human features are similar. So there's a lot of different places that kind of get clumped together as a region. So you could argue that like Illinois has a different culture from Missouri, but Illinois and Missouri are all considered part of what's called the Midwest, which would be the region. Okay, so we're similar, but we're a little bit different. Location is where is it? Like specifically, where is it? Where is something? How do you find it? Okay. Place is what's it like there? Okay, what are the physical and human features of a place? So what is the culture like? What is the actual geography, the physical geography like? What is it like to be there? And then interaction is how do people interact with each other? How do people interact to the environment? So maybe sometimes they change according to the environment, or sometimes they change the environment to suit their needs. So we'll look at those different things, okay? All right, here we go. So first one, location. Where is it? Just FYI, I didn't say this on the last part about geography, but obviously you're going to be filling in the blanks. Anything that is red is something that should probably be highlighted. So go ahead and highlight it in your notes, because there's a good chance, wink, they're going to show up somewhere on a test or quiz or things like that, okay? So back to this. So location, where is it? So there's absolute location. So what is the exact position on the globe? Okay, where exactly are you? And so you could say you're as specific as like an address, or you could use like longitude, latitude lines, which we'll talk about in just a second here, or you can talk about like other, like you're in a city or whatever. Okay, but if you're going to use latitude, longitude, which we'll use a lot in this class, so latitude refers to the parallel lines that measure north and south, okay, but they run east and west, so these are the horizontal lines that go across a map. The middle of it being the equator, so anything north of the equator is north, anything south of the equator is south. And then longitude, those are the vertical lines on a map or a globe, and they measure east-west, okay? So they start at the prime meridian as 0 degrees. The prime meridian runs right through Greenwich, England. And then the coordinates would be combining those two. What is the exact position, the latitude and longitude, and it gives you a specific spot on Earth. So, for example, 20 degrees north, 8 degrees west is a specific absolute position. Now, relative location, okay, relative location is what is it by? What's it around? So when I go out of town and people say, where are you from? I will tell people, well, I'm from around St. Louis. Okay, sometimes if I'm in the United States, I'll say I'm from Illinois, but it's real close to St. Louis. If I'm somewhere else, I might just say St. Louis and hope that they know that's somewhere in the middle. So, but that's relative location. Okay, so determining location. So the lines of latitude, like I said, those are the flat, parallel, horizontal lines across the globe or map that you're looking at. Okay, so these are also known as parallels. And they run east-west, but they measure north-south. So the equator is right in the middle. It's at 0 degrees. Okay, and the equator basically cuts the Earth in half, and anything north of that is considered the northern hemisphere. Anything south of that is considered the southern hemisphere. And then the poles, so the parallels or the lines of latitude run all the way north-south, and each degree, they go up to 90 degrees. Okay, north-south, they go up to 90 degrees. So each pole is 90 degrees north or 90 degrees south. The lines of longitude, these are also known as meridians. So this is why we have the prime meridian is the one in the middle. That's the one in general that we declare as the middle. So these are lines that connect at the poles. So where lines of latitude never meet each other, all the lines of longitude meet each other at the poles. So they run north-south, but they measure east-west. Like I said, the prime meridian is at 0 degrees, and then the international date line is at 180. So they go out to 180 degrees, and that's in general where we see maps where they is at the international date line, where it's like on the ends, on each end is the international date line. So, okay. So this is just some visuals here of lines of latitude. As you can see, they all, like I said, are parallels. That's why they're called parallels. So they measure north-south. So the yellow here is the northern hemisphere. The green here is the southern hemisphere. And then these are lines of longitude here. And they measure up to 180 degrees. This 180 here, this is the international date line. And it basically goes, and it starts obviously at the North Pole, but it goes just to the west of the United States and just to the east, all the way down to just to the east of New Zealand. Okay, so we'll take a look at that on another map, but I'll show you that. But it's basically on the opposite side of the world that we're seeing on this picture here. Okay, so this is the global grid. Now, the way lines of longitude and latitude work is exactly the same as the way it works when you are graphing in math class, okay? So the equator here, this is the x-axis. The prime meridian here, this is the y-axis. Okay, so we know anything above the x-axis, this is positive. Anything below is negative. But in geography, anything above is degrees north. Anything below is degrees south. Now with the prime meridian or the y-axis, instead of saying positive over here, we say degrees east. Instead of saying negative, we say degrees west. Okay, because we're working in direction. But this is basically how it works. And so that's the easiest way to determine how basically, or actually to determine absolute location, okay? Go ahead, I know it's not red, but go ahead and highlight grid too, because there's a good chance you'll see that too. Okay, so hemisphere, I've talked about this a little bit already, but a hemisphere is one of the halves. Okay, so if you were to cut the Earth in half, on the equator, this would be the northern hemisphere, this would be the southern hemisphere. And then if you were to cut it in half on the prime meridian, this would be the western hemisphere, this would be the eastern hemisphere. So we live in the northern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. Okay, so we live right here. All right. So site refers to the specific location of a place. So for example, the end of a peninsula. So I went on vacation to Cabo in Mexico, and that sits right on the end of a peninsula. So whenever I talk about Cabo, I'll say it's at the end of the peninsula. Situation, this refers to the geographic position in relation to other places and its connection to other regions. So for example, a port city might be close to farmland because the farmers will ship their their products to the port, and then they'll sell them to whoever. Okay, so this is true of St. Louis. So St. Louis is a big hub, but it's around a lot of farmland. So a lot of farmers will ship their food or whatever they're doing to places in St. Louis, who will then take it out to other places. Okay. All right. So next theme is place. So what is it like there? What's the culture like? What are the physical characteristics of it? So when we're talking about human characteristics or cultural characteristics, we're going to talk about food, religion, what language do they speak, what kind of clothes do they wear, what do they do for entertainment, like what are their favorite sports, what do they watch movies, or what do they do? Okay, and then the physical characteristics is basically the physical geography of the place, so, or the topography. So that would be, what is the land shaped like? Is it very mountainous? Is it very flat? Are there a lot of rivers? What does it actually look like? What is the landscape of a place? What is the climate like? Maybe it's like a desert there, or maybe like here where, we have a more of a middle type of climate where we get very hot and very cold. What's the vegetation like? What is it physically like in that place? Okay. So this right here, this shows the human characteristics. So talking like clothing, food, religion, sports, different things. And then this would be what I'm talking about, the physical characteristics. Okay, what does it look like? What is the natural look of the place? What does it have? What physical features are there? Interactions, the next theme. So interactions is the relationship between humans and their environment. So, for example, there's certain things that we can do and certain things we can't do in different places. So we can't really surf in Collinsville. It doesn't happen a lot, but you could go to California and surf if you want to. Okay, but how do we interact with our environment? What are some things that we do that interacts with the environment? Okay, so that might be like playing sports, that might be farming the land, it might be based on like what kind of clothes do we wear. There's all kinds of different ways that we adapt to the environment, and then that we adapt the environment to us. Okay. Movement. So movement refers to the transfer of goods, people, and ideas. So, for example, cultural diffusion, this is where there's a spread of goods, of people, of ideas. So, for example, in this one, religion would be an idea. So this map down here shows the spread of Christianity at the end of the Roman Empire, okay, all the way to what does it look like, how many McDonald's are there in the world, how does that spread? Regions are homogeneous areas, so they often have the same features. So we can classify this in a lot of different ways. So climate regions, vegetation regions, political regions. So this, for example, is the political map of the 2016 election. So we live in Illinois. We would also often be called a blue state. Okay, so those would be different ways to characterize regions, okay? This is an example of a climate map. So we live in more of a temperate, too hot, humid. We're kind of like right in the middle here of the climate. So you could see the different regions. So we would live like in the temperate region, basically. So there's different ways of classifying regions. So you could have a formal region, something that actually has a common characteristic. So like the Corn Belt or the South, things like that. And then you have things that are more of a functional region. So that there's a central place and then there's a surrounding area that are linked to it. So a metropolitan area, for example. So like St. Louis would be our central place, and then the surrounding areas, we live in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Okay, so that would be our functional region. And then there's a perceptual region. And so this is just kind of defined by popular feelings and images rather than, objective data. Okay, so just kind of, that's more based culturally on kind of what people kind of perceive of you. Okay. All right, so absolute location versus relative location. So we talked a little bit about location, but I want to get a little more specific about it. So relative location, like I said, is the relationship of one place in relationship with another. So, like I said, we live by St. Louis, okay? So we live in the St. Louis area. That would be our relative location. But our absolute location is this right here. So 38 degrees north, 40 miles, 28 seconds north, 89 degrees, 59 miles, 43 seconds west. So that's specifically right there. Okay, but so the relative location, like I said, would be we live in the St. Louis area. Okay. Different maps. So there's two different types of maps that we're going to be looking at a lot. So physical maps and political maps, and then we'll get into the other types of maps here in a second. But a physical map shows the topography of an area, okay? So in this case, the United States. So what is the elevation? What kind of physical features do they have? Like, are there mountains? Are there lakes? Are there rivers? What does it show? And then it shows, like I said, elevation. So we see like in the Rocky Mountains, there's a lot more elevation, okay, all the way up to the purple here. But then it also shows relief, okay? So it gets very high, and you can see that it's getting lower and lower until you get into the river valleys here, okay? And that's relief, elevation and relief. So they will show both of those things. Political map, this shows human-made features, okay? So that would be cities, it would be states, it would be country lines, it would be things like this has the rail system or the interstate system. It's got, like state capitals and things like that. All those are man-made things. So political maps show you man-made features. There's other types of maps, so thematic maps. So these are special purpose maps that are used to emphasize a single idea or particular kind of information. I'm going to show you some examples of these in a second. A qualitative map will use colors, symbols, lines, or dots to show information related to a specific area. And then a flow line map will show you the movement of people, animals, goods, and ideas, as well as physical processes like hurricanes, glaciers. It'll show movement, basically. Okay, that's the big thing with flow line maps. Okay, so this first one, this is a thematic map. So this one is showing you wind resource map. So it's basically showing you how windy places get in regards to how much power is generated by wind, okay? This is from the U.S. Department of the Energy. Okay, so this is a thematic map. This would be a qualitative map because it's showing like specific locations and how they relate to each other. Okay, so the satellite offices, and then it shows them connecting. This would be an example of a flow line map. So we're seeing the Columbian Exchange. So when the Europeans colonized this side of the world, a lot of things went to the Americas and a lot of things went from the Americas. So what did that kind of look like? So that was the Columbian Exchange. Okay, so that is it for the day. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. And don't forget to do your processor. Have a good one.